Well, I don't have to tell you as an instructor or a faculty member. Students have gone mobile. Anyone surprised? I mean, every moment that you see, they are totally plugged in, connected. Won't even go through numbers like that because we know it's out there. And in our traditional programming classes, whether you're teaching C, C++, C#, VB, Java, JavaScript, any of those languages, we're definitely seeing a mobile presence become a part of those courses, or at least it should. In fact, as of this summer, do you know that 50% of web pages will be accessed through a mobile device? I mean, everything's gone mobile. You say, how so? Well, if you have any kind of Google, Android, all these different tablets out there, they're all run by apps, not programs. If you have an iPhone or any of the Mac computers, everything is app-driven. And if you saw 2 days ago, what's Windows 8 gone to as well? Apps. So program development, as we've considered it forever, is probably now app development. Because where are you soon going to run that program? If everything is now an app platform. I just saw this yesterday, probably a rigged photo, but it was online. That doesn't mean anything, right? But this was the Pope's in 2005, when the last Pope was elected, if you would. And look at the one phone in the right corner. And this was yesterday. I mean, if that doesn't tell you what the last 8 years has brought to us. But what I'm noticing, and myself included at our school, as of a couple years ago, there really wasn't a school in the country that even had a mobile apps course. And so now we really better look at our development area. And even if you don't have any programming classes or development classes, this would be a really ripe opportunity to create some classes that I think students would actually sign up for and actually benefit from. So we need a surprise in our environment to see all these new things that are out there. And you know what I see is we need to surprise them. You say, what do you mean surprise them? Not have the old-fashioned everything.
Oh my God!
She seems a little excited. Although I have to tell you, these parents are a little sadistic. I'll show you what I mean.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Thank you so much!
Watch right now.
Oh my God!
Is that not wrong? But what an idea. You know, we definitely are, once you decide that you make that commitment to make some mobile application courses, and you really have two options. One is to take your existing course structure that you already have in place, and for many of us, who can raise their hand to say, if I have to add a new course or change a course in my curriculum, it's like an act of Congress? Raise your hand if that's true. You might be able to do mobile by the year 2020 at this rate. Act of God for her. So, we'll call the Pope, we're good. But here's an idea of what we did at our campus. We had two options. It's very, very difficult to add a new course in Virginia. So we were faced with the option that we could take our existing courses, for example, Visual Basic, C#, flavors of C if you would, and we could add a very strong mobile component. And we found out we didn't have to totally rewrite. You say, well, you still have to cover loops and you have to cover arrays and variables. We still do that. So we took our existing Java class, first semester Java class, and we've now turned it into an Android Java class. You say, but they got to learn Java. It's done in Java. So we're doing all the same basics, you know, instantiation, all the, you know, all the great terms. But they not only can write traditional Java code, but they can port it and emulate it out to an Android device. And I think that's powerful. Students are excited because they don't have to have an Android phone in class, but yet they can bring one and port it right out and actually are making apps in class for their own phones. Let's face that, that's a very exciting to our students today. We're taking our Visual Basic classes, our C flavor classes. we're going to be adding the new Windows 8, what we call Windows Store apps is the proper term. So those are programmed in Visual Basic and C#. So we're trying to just take all of our classes, think about it, mobile should be affecting everything. Web design classes, we're not, with 50% of the pages being displayed on mobile devices, we're now taking 50% of our web page, like Dreamweaver or those type classes, and we are now building to make mobile websites. I mean, that's the demand today, and if we don't start to make those changes. So clearly there's some phone wars out here. I was surprised, I have to tell you a little story behind this. About 2 years ago, Cengage came to me and said, hey, everybody wants something mobile, 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 mobile. And you love, I've always inserted some mobile even in my books way before it was even out there. So they said, hey, write a mobile book. And I said, okay, I will write an iOS, iPhone book. And I started getting ready. And they called me a week later. Hold on. I said, what do you mean, hold on? Have you looked at numbers lately? I said, what do you mean numbers? I said, the iPhone rules, man. Everybody's got an iPhone, right? 2 years ago, that trend was just starting to change, if you remember. And they said, we just surveyed instructors who would take the survey all over the country, and we found out that 82% of them want to teach Android. And I went, uh-oh, I think I'm doing the wrong thing. I start looking at numbers, and let me tell you what the phone wars say right now. And please understand, this is going to constantly change. This is not like, for sure, they're the winner, okay? Here's today's Gartner figure, and this is on March 1st. So, of course, each month these do change. According to Gartner's figures right now, Android now claims 71.4% of the smartphone market. Wow. And I want to apologize. When I turned in the write-up 6 months ago for today's event, if you look in your books, it says over 50%. Boy, has a lot changed in the last 6 months. So clearly, and you say, well, why is that? I really think it's a price point thing, let's face it. And your students, I find, really have a lot of Android phones, because obviously the price point in their category. So is the Android the best phone on the planet? I used to believe this. The iOS I thought was the supreme phone, and because the price point, the Android, yeah. But if you look at the latest stats for the Galaxy that's coming out, the S4 later this week, it's already out in China, they actually are rated above the iPhone 5 for quality and performance. So we're seeing that kind of change up too. I got a chance to go to Seoul, South Korea and visit Samsung. That's how they say it there. Samsung. Everybody say that. We're saying it wrong. And Samsung, every person in Asia, which is of course our most populated continent, has a lot of Samsung phones and Androids, and clearly, this is an amazing time in history that they're doing very well. By summer, I just read a statistic that Android will take over the tablet market, which is fascinating because of the iPad craze 2 or 3 years ago. And real quick, who are my Android phone or tablet owners in this room? Look at this. So are you all seeing a trend? So, therefore, we're going to see that mobile phones are overtaking PCs, clearly. By 2015, 90% of the handsets sold in mature markets will be clearly smartphones. And Android is very cool about their versions. I'm trying to give a quick 45 minutes and kind of put things together. They name their versions after desserts. Don't you have to love anybody who names anything after dessert? So, some of the dessert names, the most recent right now, we've got key lime pie, and we've got ice cream sundae. Do you all see that up there? Jelly bean, all these great names. So the first version of Android just came out in 2008, so this is really new. If you look at the timeline on this, this is like, oh my goodness, this is fast. Cupcake and donut, eclair, froyo, gingerbread, honeycomb, ice cream sandwich. And now we're eating some key lime pie and jelly beans. It's just so fast. But the good thing about this is all the code that you would teach with hasn't changed. Now there's some new added features, but you could open an old program from 2008, it still runs. So that's the good thing about most of this. It's not like all the code changes every quarter or something like that. Originally, our school, let me tell you what we did wrong and what we did right. When we wanted to do mobile, our first thought was, let's just do a mobile class overview, right? Wouldn't that be a great idea? So we thought we were going to teach, a little bit of iPhone, a little bit of Android, a little bit of Windows Phone, all in one semester. That did not go well for us. And the reason for that, it was just by the time you got just going on one, we're switching to another in the installation and the setup. So maybe it's worked for you, but it wasn't a good move for us. So now we are teaching separate courses for some of these topics. It was just a little overwhelming there. I don't want this to be a 45-minute commercial, but just real quick, make sure you ask your reps to get you a free copy of Android Bootcamp. There's an introductory and comprehensive book. This is the thick one. Just a 2-minute commercial, so if you don't get a chance to peek at it. Well, there are not many books in this space, but the reason I hope this book is going to do well. Anyone using it yet? Oh my, wow. Okay, live ammunition. How's it going? Oh, good. Oh, my goodness, that's good. Last year, no one could raise their hand yet. It was new. What's different about it is they're creating entire little apps in each chapter. A lot of trade books, you mean by trade books, that aren't classroom textbooks, they all say, just grab this code, throw it in, and a button will appear. And the students are like, oh, cool. How does that work? Now, this is not one of those books. This is step-by-step of how to create the app. They create an entire project. Kind of just like office books would do, where they actually have a finished product. Now, are these going to be thousands of lines of code? No. This is designed for either a first-time programmer or a student who's had some programming experience in Java or any other language. If they've had programming experience already, they'll be able to get through this in one semester. If they're new to this, you're going to probably need 2 weeks for some of the chapters, you know what I mean, to make sure you build that foundation, and you probably aren't going to finish the book in one semester. So, good. Let me show you. He has one of our apps from Chapter 2. Thank you. So in Chapter 2, they build a simple salsa recipe, something just real. So he can hit the View Recipe button, and there it is. And they're building, now of course a much larger program would be many, many more of this, but they get the basics down. Thank you, that was cool on his app right there. So later get a free copy, yay, all is well. One little caveat on the book, what happens is they keep changing these ice cream flavors, right? And they change them at about every 4 to 6 months. So what's happening right now is all the code always still works. But for example, the first 2 chapters that are showing where to set it up the first time, a few of the buttons have moved. So what we're doing on the instructor site for Cengage, for this book title, is we're re-imaging each time the new comes out. And we have 2 free chapter PDFs for all of your students that you can download, put them digitally or print them, whatever you're more comfortable with, that have the new exact layout that matches their screen. You say, well, why can't you print the book every 4 months? You get my point. We are going to update this again next year, but they don't do books every 4 months. And it turns out I might need some sleep every so often. So, but all the code and everything still works, but those first 2 chapters, we're always going to keep those digitally so that to set up your first project you would understand. So let me just show you, there's such a need for developers, and I just want to show you around here a little bit. So what would you need to get started? And some of you teach this all the time, but I want to give some basics here to get going. Android.com is, if you don't mind the term, lowercase Bible technology, meaning this is kind of the core where you can find all the basics to Android. You wouldn't want to use this to teach from, but if you're looking up anything, this is if this were to print out, this would be like a manual this big. So if you're trying to find pieces of code, they at Discover Android right now, it's some great sites that tell you about different size phones, different size forms factors as well, and you can discover all these different devices, get apps. One thing that I take a lot of time in my course doing is I take them out to the Android Marketplace, which is now called Google Play. And now in the Android Marketplace, we're now at the 600,000 apps number. So it's amazing how many apps are out there. And in the book and as well as in class, I take time to show them not only how to make an app, but how do you market it? How do you've got to look at the full picture. These are entrepreneurs for the most part, creating an app and posting it. And I think I told this story last year. One of my favorite, my students who made the most money off their apps, I had a student a year and a half ago, she came to me and she was not my best student. How do I put it nicely? C at best. She was one in the office the whole time, help me, help me, help me. And at the end of the class she said, I'm going to build a crock pot app. And I went, yeah. I'm thinking, what are you making a crock pot? Are you selling crock pots? She said, no, no, no. Recipes for crock pots. My grandma in the 40s actually printed a book, and she's passed, but I have all these great recipes. It's out of print. I'd love to put them in as an app. And I thought, well, you know what? That might go. But I was really worried about her coding skills. And she put this app together. She's posted it on the store. And when I had seen her about 6 months ago, I asked her, I said, how did that app do? She said, pretty well. She said, I'm the #1 crock pot, and I've now put it in 10 languages. And it's huge in France. I don't know, the French like crock pots. French fries, crock pots, okay. And I said, well, how are you doing? She said, well, at that point, she had sold 60,000 copies at $1.99 each. Now, if you're new to the app world, the standard cut is 70% for the developer, 30% for the store and entity and device. So everybody doing the math? She just made more in 6 months than pretty much anybody in this room, including myself. So that's my C student. So pretty exciting that we're starting to see that kind of development. I want them to know when they post, like here's Angry Birds, when they post anything to the store, what's nice about this development environment, if you're doing iOS, each student would need a $100 account per year to post anything to the store. Luckily, this is so much cheaper. If you want them to post to the store, and you don't have to do that in the course, but that might be a nice final exam, is to build something, if you would, sellable. But you can create an account for yourself, one-time ever cost of $25 ever. And all your students can actually post underneath you, of course, not from money-selling sites or you make the money. This is an idea called retirement. But my students post under here. So we go through even how to post, how to do descriptions, and how to sell these things, how to get marketed. You're even allowed to put a YouTube video up here. Angry Birds did such a good job. They hired.
I'm a NASA astronaut, and I'm on the International Space Station. We're currently about 240 nautical miles above the surface of Earth.
Isn't this the best YouTube sale? And all this to sell an Angry Bird, Angry Bird Space. So it's amazing how you can market and so forth. So let's get started into how you get going with this. The software to do this, not all apps are built with the exact same software. So primarily if you're building iOS or the Apple apps, if you would, or iPhone apps, you use a language called Objective-C. And Apple is kind of tough at the store, not only for the price, but they turn down 85% of the apps turned in because they're really looking for that wonderful, consistent quality. So a lot of my students have been, so they have to get a little better at that. Android, as an open source, not all Android apps are programmed with Java. There's something called like app developer that are little like cutesy packages, but let me explain something. Those packages are for lightweight apps. This would be like drag and drop, and if you're making a quick little news feed, we're in. But if you're doing any kind of, grit, if you would, you're going to need to use a bigger development environment. And this is what almost 80% of Android apps are built using a free open source package called Eclipse. And this is the same Eclipse who teaches Java. You all know what I'm talking about, that you've probably used for years. Eclipse Classic is what is typically used, although a lot of these actually work. May I give one recommendation if you're new to this? Always download the Windows 32-bit, even if you have a 64-bit machine. I find that some of us may have a 64-bit machine but have some 32-bit pieces on it, drivers and browsers and so forth, and they may end up getting fussy. So in this case, it might be best to go to the lowest denominator. So 32-bit, it's 183 meg download. What we have in the preface right here is exact instruction downloads. The second piece of this, and I'll explain in a minute, they now have a new all-in-one download, but some of my students have had errors with it, so if you still need to do it the old-fashioned way, you have both options. So Eclipse is kind of this Java language. Imagine Java does all kinds of things, from Java scripting to Java programs, but one of its subsets, if you would, is this Android. So you would also install the Android environment, or SDK, Systems Development Kit, and then you can start building Android products. Let me show you what it looks like after it's installed and so forth. So after you get it installed, you open it up. Here's typical. It looks just like Java Eclipse, because it is. And you're able to put in some code and layout as you go. And don't worry, you have an emulator built in. So if you don't have a phone physically plugged into your computer, of course the drivers for that phone do have to be installed on that computer, then you can just push everything out to an emulator. And here's what the emulator looks like. So if we want to do a little program right here, or app is what we call it, obviously. So the students might create a little image that they can do some dog shelter videos, pictures. You know, if you want to adopt this dog, you know, from your local dog shelter, they could make a quick app with that, possibly. They might build an app that has, and again, so the emulator can run and do everything. It's a little slow, so once I run it, I don't close it. I just keep pushing everything out to it to get it updated, because it's a little frustrating that way. We even show students how to put music in apps. You say, oh, music, that's just for fun. Well, no, 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 it's a billion-dollar industry, this thing called music. So they might have something along, you know, the sounds of the East, or they might play a palace song. So they learn the basic ways of creating all kinds of apps. We talk a lot about design and development and correct coding. And as they go through some of this, so they learn all the basics. For example, in the concert tickets right here, if you're building this, you're going out to a concert called Ticket Vault. And how many tickets? Well, how about if they type something wrong? All that error detection, everything is taught. So if I want to see that I want to take a group of us 6 out, this is called a spinner control. And let's say I want to go to the concert called 9 Volt. So we can do this, and notice I could touch the screen if I had a touch screen, or just use my mouse to do the emulator. But what's best in class is I have my students all pull out their Android phones, and I find about 90% of the students in my classes who are taking this have a device. They might even have a Kindle Fire or something like that, the 7-inch, or the 10.1 Lexus, or some of the other ones that are out there. And with the Nexus devices, they can port all these out to their devices, and they pass them around and touch them. There's nothing like that real item there to have that experience, and they get very proud of showing those type of things. So notice, to calculate this ticket cost, they would have to do their traditional you know, mathematics here and all that good stuff to figure out data types, variables, all that good stuff. And my program is running really, really slow at the moment. Let me just show you how to set up a quick application. So for your very first time, you'll feel like, oh, I've seen this once before. We can go under File, New, and build an Android application project. Let's call it Hello World. Most of you know that Dennis Ritchie in 1972 sent out a Hello World, and it's now tradition in every programming language, I don't know why, that we have to say our first little hello world. Some of you are smiling. What's interesting about this is there are so many different phones out there in the Android space, and they were made like at Gingerbread, or they were different iterations of that operating system for the Android. So you may say, I want the minimum required to be Froyo. Froyo is an old phone. If you had a Froyo phone, and you can look up in your version, if you have If you go to your settings in any Android device, it says minimum version. Most all phones are at the 2.2 or later phase. If you still have one of the ones from 2008, then you could go lower. But you can see this would go from 2.2 Froyo to Android 4.1, which is the new Jelly Bean. So that means it would run on all those types of phones. So if you want to do something very specific, let's say your brand new Galaxy S4 had a really high-end video camera on board, by the way it does. So then if you're only building an app for those users, then of course you wouldn't make your minimum SDK so low, because maybe that kind of app wouldn't work without the correct hardware. So you can set this up pretty easily. You click next a couple times, and I have to tell you, my drop rate, and I hate admitting this, with traditional classes in programming, a lot of students, you know, they think it's a cool class to take, but sometimes they don't have the math or logic skills. Do you know nationwide the average drop rate out of a first semester, not just logic class, but a full-on programming class, is upwards between 60 to 70%. It's very upsetting. So I have this idea. Programming, look at my hands real quick. The learning curve on programming, it starts out, oh, okay, you click here. But it goes sky high really quick. And once you kind of get at one language under your belt, everyone kind of gets, it's not so bad. But what we're doing is we're losing a lot of students getting up that cliff. So how I wrote the book and how I write any programming book, including my Visual Basic book, is if you notice in my book starting a tad slow, I think if you just kind of work with them and get up to that cliff, we'll get to the same point, baby. But I feel that we need to take a little slower rate at the beginning. I do a lot of group. 2 students will work together. Let's say she's really a good program. Ray, you're new, sorry. Then I would have you be the typer, but she would be your coach. And the first couple assignments I would have turn in together. You know, those first 4 to 6 weeks in a programming class are crucial. You say, no, I need to weed them out. No, you know, baby, I don't think that's true. I think the deal is here that we need to, these could be a very, very good programming students. We just need to get them up onto that plateau. So take it easy. We get to the same point here. So we can set this up, and these are all step-by-steps later that you can look through. I'm just typing here real quick to get an app going. I don't want you to think that this is only an environment. I already have a world named that, so let me just change my numbers there. I don't want you to think this is all code. You're going to be creating a lot of GUIs, and here's what I mean by GUIs environment here. Let me just get this thing started for us to have to play with real quick. So I'm just getting it opened and ready to roll here. There is an entire GUI environment right here, and let me show you in just a second. You can build your interface, and let me close a couple little windows there to make it look nice. So we can actually, you know, have drag and drops in a second. Once this loads, you can drag buttons and, you know, the interface over. You're not just talking pure Java code in the back. So a lot about design. So we can pull over radio buttons and spinners and all those kinds of things. Make it red and green and, you know, pull in images and pictures. So the student, when they're done creating their app, they can just come to the top right here and hit the run button, and they can test their app. The code behind it is written in Java. And really, there's not that much difference. There's a few different Java classes, obviously, in the Android environment. But if you have any kind of Java background or any kind of programming environment, we walk you step by step through it. And as soon as you hit the emulator, there you go. You start to get your app to start to run. You know, as we look at this, I think we really have a huge need for developers. The first thing I do in my class, the first day of a programming class, I take them out to Microsoft.com, and I go to the Help Wanted ads area of, they don't call it Help Wanted ads, but, you know, need help. And do you know right now at Microsoft, they have 11,000 open programming and developer jobs. You say, why don't they hire people? There is no one to hire. In the area of development and programming, we are number 2, 4, 8, and 11. If you look at the, why 2, 4, 8, and 11? They call us different things: computer engineering, computer developing, computer, you know, it's all the same thing, but they break it into job categories. This is at the Department of Labor website. We have the biggest job growth potential out there. We don't have enough students signing up in our programs. Kids today want to be doctors and lawyers. They don't even know what a programmer is. So I love this little video right here. This just came out. I want you to show the students. This is done by Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and many others. If you haven't had a chance to see this, this is powerful. What should computer literacy mean today? Read this real quick.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old. I was in 6th grade.
I learned to code in college.
Freshman year, first semester, intro to computer science.
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I think it was pretty humble beginnings. I think the first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
The first time I actually had something come up and say, hello world.
Look at these names, you all know them.
I made a computer do that. It was just astonishing.
Learning how to program didn't start off as wanting to learn all of computer science or trying to master this discipline or anything like that. It just started off because I wanted to do this one simple thing. I wanted to make something that was fun for myself and my sisters. And I wrote this little program and then basically just add a little bit to it. And then when I needed to learn something new, I looked it up either in a book or on the internet and then added a little bit to it.
It's really not unlike kind of playing an instrument or something or playing a sport. It starts out being very intimidating, but you kind of get the hang of it over time.
Coding is something that can be learned, and I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating.
He was a computer programmer in college.
But, you know,
what's the last name?
A lot of the coding that people do is actually fairly simple. It's more about the process of breaking down problems than sort of coming up with complicated algorithms as people traditionally think about it.
You don't have to be a genius to know how to code. You need to be determined.
Addition, subtraction, that's about it.
You should probably know your multiplication tables.
You don't have to be a genius to code. Do you have to be a genius to read?
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
What it is, computers are everywhere. You want to work in agriculture? Do you want to work in entertainment? Do you want to work in manufacturing? It's just all over.
Kids, and when people found out, they laughed at me and laughed at all these things, and I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool, and I'm learning a lot, and some of my friends have jobs.
Our policy is literally to hire as many talented engineers as we can find. The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
To get the very best people, we try to make the office as awesome as possible.
Wouldn't you love working in this environment? Show this to your students. This is what resonates. Because I know they should just love it for the code. I love that this had the diversity of women too in this. We can code, go figure.
You have a fantastic chef.
Free food.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Free laundry.
Snacks.
This would go a long way
places
if you
to
showed
play
this to your
and video
students.
games and scooters. There's all these kind of interesting things around the office. And places
By the way,
where you
that's
can play or
Microsoft's
relax,
lunchroom
or go to think, or
on
play music or be
Bellevue
creative.
campus. Been there.
Whether you're trying to make a lot of money or whether you just want to change the world, computer programming is an incredibly empowering skill to learn.
I think if someone had told me that software is really about humanity, that it's really about helping people by using computer technology, it would have changed my outlook a lot earlier.
To be able to actually come up with an idea and then see it in your hands and then be able to press a button and have it be in millions of people's hands. I think we're the first generation in the world that's really ever had that kind of experience.
Only 1 out of 10 high schools in the country have anything to do with developing or coding, even though it's one of our highest occupations in our country. You know, I'm preaching to the choir, am I not? You know, one consideration here, I recently was on a plane and I sat next to a gentleman who was also a professor. Well, he was a much bigger deal than I. He is a Harvard University IT professor, programming. And I said, oh, my goodness, you know, Harvard. What language are you teaching there? COBOL. And I said, no, this year. Now, I want you to know, I've been in this biz for 28 years. I have COBOL, I've done COBOL, I've done Fortran. We could all make the list, right? I said, sir, why? He said, you know, it's not so important about teaching the latest and greatest mobility or language. It's more about the theory behind it. I said, sir, with all due respect, I said, so you're telling me that the languages today have no theory behind them? He said, oh, but then I would have to learn something new. May I leave you with, guys, everyone who just raised their hand that they taught an Android course didn't know this beforehand. Is this correct? Did you have to sit and learn something new? You say, well, I don't know this, I can't teach this. Nobody knows it. I would love to say, before I wrote the book, that I had programmed thousands of apps. Now, I had programmed a few. But the point being made is, we all learn. This is a journey. This has only been out very soon. We all need to look back at our courses and say, you know what? Where are we going to put mobility? Even if you don't put my book or anybody else's. The point is, do this as a service for your students. We do not teach classes. We teach students. Right now, students have a better shot in the computer developing field to get hired out of a community college than a 4-year. It just came out in CNN last week. Why? Because they had the more current skills. I'm not saying universities, a lot of you do, definitely. But we've got to not only teach theory, but actual language. You say, once they know the theory, they can program anything. Yeah, but that theory doesn't show up on their resume. They want to see different terms, different words. So various students quickly can build this. They're building salsa recipes, ticket vaults by chapter 4. They're doing patient wait. And everything in this particular project, this is chapter 5. They're actually building a travel app for San Francisco. You can see the shout-out city that I liked here. They're building things with music. They're building things with newer things. They're using tablets because that's huge. This is where you build apps for today. Everything with tabs and tablets and all these different kinds of environments. They're learning animation here. Why? You say animation is just for fun. No, that's called a gaming industry that's making billions. Mapping. Google Maps is part of this. Make sure you show them how to publish everything at the end. You know, we've come so far. What we're seeing here, in 1982 we were impressed with Pong. You remember?
They call it electronic mail.
Ooh, email.
What? No wires.
Wireless.
I'm still surfing. It's boosting performance automatically.
And if I could add one more segment to it, it's now mobile. Guys, I have on, again, the instructor site, I took chapter 2 and took an hour and I taught it step by step on video because we don't have that time here. So if you email me or just ask your rep or just look on the Cengage site, we have webinars saved of me teaching the actual chapters as if I were teaching to my students. Click here, do there. Please watch these videos. We're trying to help you out because nobody knows this stuff. Please ask your reps and all the people here at Cengage, you want more of that type stuff because it would help us all if they would allow us to make more of these type videos because we're all going to need to get on the same page. So explain that's valuable to everybody as we go along. So, guys, did you pick up something new, hopefully in the last 45 minutes? You know, we're living in a very, very mobile world. Everything's changing as we know it, and we're all in this together. Please get my card. I have some up here if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help you out. Guys, I wish you the best on your journey and on your journey home as well. Thank you so.